So this is the first meeting of the Wave2 Consultative Group. It follows on from a very successful year last year with what we called a strategic leadership group with Wave1 providers. So we're looking at Wave2 providers, and the idea of this group is to tap into the expertise of people who are actually delivering T-levels, so that we can get your expertise, we can get your ideas on, you've been there, you've done that, you know what it's supposed to be about. And there'll be certain topics come up as we go through the year to discuss. The purpose of this meeting and why we called this meeting is that we're in the process of working on the production of a new set of resources to publish for on behalf of the DFE on both the T-level and the industry placement teams. So we've got some proposals which we'd like to run by our colleagues from the colleges, and we'd like to get your opinion on the content and so on of that. But we'll go through that as we go through the meeting. What I'd like to do before we actually get into the meeting and before I hand over to Colin from SDN is actually just show our colleagues from the colleges a couple of resources which we have got available, and we'll share the link to this with you in the chat so that you have got access to it. Now, I'm hoping that you can see my screen. Yeah, so you can see my screen. So what we have here is this is the support with delivering T-levels website. So it's a gov.uk website. Now, on the support with delivering T-levels website, there's a section called implementation plan and planning, and within that implementation and planning, there's a full set of 20 articles of case studies and guidance resources which we've recently published to assist T-level providers with their planning for implementing the T-levels. So there will also be another set of resources being published on industry placements, but we've not quite got to the publication stage there. But attached to the invite to this meeting, I put an overview of 2 documents. I put an overview of what's resources are available on the T-level planning and what resources are available on industry placement planning. So I've put these there, so it will help you to see what we've already got there. And if you have any questions or you want to have access to some of these resources, maybe for your own planning purposes back at college, then please do let me know, and we can share these with you. I would just like to show you just a couple of examples, so one case study and one guidance resource, just to let you see what it looks like in real. So this is a case study from the support with delivering T-levels website. So this case study is on the curriculum, T-level curriculum. So we have the navigations at the top, so you can navigate to wherever you wish to on the document. Now, the case studies are designed in a way that there's small chunks of text, and then we have a series of videos, audio clips, and so on from Wave1 providers to explain and give more detail to the lead-in text from the part above, and it takes it through. So each of them covers a different topic. So as I said, this one covers T-level curriculum. So it takes the listener and the reader through the providers and their thought processes and how they got to the stage that they got to. So as I said, these are all Wave1 providers. So this is what we're looking at as a case study. And the guidance resource is slightly different in format. It actually contains much more text, so it's more of a descriptive resource. So we're giving a description of things. So this one covers T-levels process and timeline, and so it gives a description of certain parts of the topic. And what we've done at the end of the guidance resources is that we've actually made some of the resource available for download. So this is a downloadable form, which is going to come up in a second. So this is a downloadable form of part of this. So this is part of the timeline from the guidance resource, and then usable tables from the guidance resource. So that is what we're these are the kind of things that we're actually looking at trying to produce again. In terms of the sun's just come out in Essex. I don't know if you can tell that from my screen. Sorry about that. Yeah, so these are the types. This is the type of thing that we're looking to try and produce again, and we've got proposals that Colin's going to take us through just in a second or two, which have already been through DFE for approval. But what we're looking at from a provider point of view is any input from yourselves will be valuable in terms of, we think this is really good, we would like potentially there's bits that are missing here, and so on. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Colin to introduce himself and to take us through the next part of the meeting.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Steve. So Colin Bentwood.
Maggie's here now. Can we just say hello to Maggie? Maggie's made it on now in the end. You're on mute now, Maggie.
No sound.
You're not on mute, but we still can't hear you. Okay, you can hear us. So if there's anything then, Maggie, that you think that you want to say, then can you just type it into the chat then if we can't hear you? Would that be okay? Yeah. Okay. Sorry about this. I don't know what's happened here. But so we'll move on then. Sorry to interrupt, Colin. I'll pass back to you.
No problem. So Colin Bentwood, SDN, we've been partnering with AOC on the provider support package. We also work with Simon on the employer support package on the other side to help with industry placements. And previously we'd worked with ETF on the professional development part of the T-level preparations. So we've been involved in it for 3 years, really, developing resources and providing direct support to both providers and employers. So I'm going to summarize, I'll just share my screen. I'm going to summarise the proposals for the next batch of resources. So you've seen the T-level ones, as Steve said, the industry placement ones are going to turn up soon on the site. You've had a 2-page document describing them to you that one of them looked like that, which was the T-level one. And you should have also had a similar one for industry placements. So the ask today is to get your overall view on whether this is hitting the mark, really, whether it's going to be useful for you as providers and for the providers that are going to be following you. Later in the process, we're going to ask for your detailed feedback on the actual content of the resources once we've produced drafts as part of the testing process. And we're also going to be looking at some point in the very near future for people who want to be case studies, so for case study sites. So if you want that opportunity to raise your profile in that way, let us know, and I'll explain how that's going to work in a minute as well. Okay, zoom out of the way. So we'll start with T-levels, so that as opposed to the industry placement resources. So we're going to produce 5 case studies. The difference between this set of case studies and the last set is the last set were topic based and had multiple voices. So in some cases, you know, more than half a dozen different providers giving their experience of, say, curriculum or of finance and planning or whatever it was. This time we're going to do a site-based case study, so look at a particular provider's journey, and we've chosen or hoping to select 5 different contexts for T-levels, everything from, as you can see them there, don't need to read them out, but just to make sure that all the different contexts around T-level delivery are covered. They're going to be 5 or 10 minute videos, and one of the things that I'd be very interested in your view on is whether you think that video is the right medium to put this sort of stuff across to providers. Are providers happy, you know, is a 5-10 minute video the right sort of stuff? Should we be producing just text-based? Should we be producing supporting materials to go alongside the written case studies, which is the intention really? So it'd be a 5 or 10 minute video with checklists or guidance to go alongside it. That's the current proposal. Hopefully we want to do the filming on site, and I'd also really value your advice on what that's going to be like. Obviously, with the current issues around new variants of COVID and the responses to that on site. That might not be easy in every case, and we will have COVID contingencies in place if we need them. But what's your view about film crews coming onto your sites? And I'd be very interested to hear what you've got to say about that. So 5 different contexts, and within those 5 different contexts, 2 specific areas of focus. The firstly will be the student journey, and the secondly will be the capital projects. So let me do those one at a time. So there you go. Student journey, those are some of the areas that we might cover. In the paper that I sent you, there's a longer list. I might actually just flick that on the screen just for a second. So those are, so it says not limited to the, selected from, but not limited by these. So if you've got any other, firstly, do you like the idea of structuring it around a student journey? Secondly, have you got any specific aspects that you think providers need to pick up on as they're going through it? So when we get to the breakout sessions, you could refer back to this list, which is in the paper that Steve sent you in the meeting invite. Then the second aspect of the T-level case studies will be capital bids. Now, I suppose there's quite a lot of difference between student journey and capital bids and capital projects, firstly as topics. So maybe it's like a chapter 1, chapter 2 type case study that we might approach, but we want to try and cover both of those areas in the 5 different contexts. And again, there's some of the aspects of capital projects that we'll be looking to explore, and I'd be interested in your views on those as well. Then moving on to the, through my notes like Boris, got them out of order. So right, moving on to industry placements. So we're going to focus this around 3 routes: health, digital, science. So we've split health and science. There's major differences in the delivery of those and major differences in the employer body that you're aiming at with industry placements and so forth. So 3 separate toolkit type approaches tailored for each route. And again, that's described in the second paper that Steve sent you, and covering some of those issues that are on the screen there. So looking at learning objectives, expectations, preparing students for placement, employability, and then on the other side, employer engagement, and different employer approaches, and some sort of checklist type approach. So those are sort of examples of the sort of things that will fit inside this toolkit. So again, be interested to hear if those are the sorts of things, that sort of issues that you've having had to tackle when setting up industry placements or when running industry placements. Obviously, there's 101 issues around industry placements to tackle. It's a massive issue. What we're trying to burrow in on this year, just some of the key ones that providers have particularly found challenging. I think learning objectives particularly has been quite an interesting one with employers, but I'd be interested to hear your view on that. So that's the content: 5 T-level case studies, 3 industry placement toolkits, and then that's the timetable. So we're in that red box now, talking to you about the specification. We'll want to do filming January, February, March, and develop the resources and the case studies January, February, March. Got quite a long period of review and testing to get those right, with a view to getting them signed off and ready and out the door for the next academic year. And then just finally, how can you help? So they've been approved in principle, but and I've highlighted as we've gone along the areas that I'd like your feedback on. So are we hitting the spot? Will they be useful? The other information, so there I'm talking about the subtopics that are highlighted. Are they the right subtopics? And then is video the right sort of approach? And how can we get on site? Your view about access for filming at the current time. So that's the introduction. Back to you, Steve. Okay,
lovely, thanks, Colin. So given the fact that we've we've only got 3 providers. I'm not sure that we need to actually go into our breakout room, so we can just have the discussion within within this forum. So attached to the meeting invite that that I updated earlier this week, there are 2 documents. There's one entitled Year 2 T-level resources and case studies, and Year 2 industry placement resources for providers. So there's 2 sets of there's 2 documents there. So can I ask you to open up possibly then the Year 2 resources case studies, so the T-level ones, not the industry placement ones. So the Year 2 T-level resources document, if I can ask you to just open that up, and I must have it open somewhere already. So I think what I think would be valuable is just to give you 2 or 3 minutes to read it. So if you can just sort of take 2 or 3 minutes just to read it, bear in mind the actual settings that we're proposing, and then the bullet points about what each case study will cover. Is that correct? Are these the right sections? Is there anything that shouldn't be there? Is there anything that should be there that's not there? And then maybe coming back then to the sort of the medium for how that's done. So I'll stop jibber jabbering for a couple of minutes, and I'll give you a chance just to read that, and then we'll start a discussion after that. So I hopefully you've reached the end of that, and if not, then as we kind of introduce it, then continue to read. So I think in terms of then the actual, so the case studies, the 5 case studies, are we right with the provider types? I don't know if anybody wishes to say anything. Sue, do you? I saw you nodding there, Sue. So I'm going to pick on you.
It looked. I know. I was going to speak anyway, because there's nothing worse, is there, when you're on holiday and nobody says anything. It looks fairly sensible to me.
Yeah.
A decent cross section.
Okay. The one thing that struck me as I read it was potentially schools.
Yeah.
With there may be something there that may be missing, but whether sixth form actually means, does sixth form mean a school and an academy with a sixth form rather than a sixth form college? Yeah. Okay. So that was the thing for me, that but that makes sense then. Gail, do you think that's about right then in terms as well? You're on mute, Gail.
No, I think that they all make perfect sense. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, I think on the way forward, we've got a few, like a handful of independent training providers that are maybe starting to think about T levels, but I think their setting will. I'm not sure that it's yet at the stage where there's enough of them to to do so. Mary, I think you wanted to say something there.
Yeah, what about a specialist college, Steve, rather than just FE, maybe land-based or SEND colleges? Would that be useful? Yeah, I know we've got a couple of land-based colleges on for this year. Would they be approaching it in a different? Would their context be different? Well, some of the work industrial placements and some of the specialisms in agriculture and that, and animal management.
Maybe if there's a very small number of a particular specialism, it's just they could just, rather than share their experiences more widely, they can just share it with each other, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, it was just a suggestion.
For a broadcast, I think we need to go with those that are going to hit many different providers of a similar type. So in terms of how to get the message across then, so in terms of the vehicle of how we actually produce them, so we showed, you know, briefly sort of small snippets with videos. I think the proposal was these videos were not, the videos that we've used previously were maybe 1-2 minute videos, but we were maybe looking at a longer video. But what do people think in terms of videos versus text?
I think it's nice to have a video, Steve, but with bulleted points to go with it, so that you can take that away and refer to that and sort of use that as a, you know, a tick list of what you've done, perhaps.
I think people expect to see something that they can watch these days. Certainly what learners expect nowadays. They don't want to have to read something; they want to be able to watch it.
This is meant for managers in colleges.
Yeah, but I think
they're still the same.
Yeah, and I think your video is sometimes it's quite useful because it's a snapshot, isn't it? And managers are busy, and if you can get a flavour of something by watching a video rather than reading, you know, a 26-page brief on something, then I think that's a useful thing from a manager's point of view.
And Maggie, I know we're unable to hear you, but you can sort of say, is that sort of similar thought for you, a video and text box mixed?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
A little. You're very quiet.
Okay, well, that makes a change. So yes, I agree definitely with the concept of a video for all the reasons that Sue's just said, but with that addition of some brief text to go with it, just to, I don't know, it's a bit of a comfort blanket for some of us oldies.
I think in the text as well, you could add hyperlinks to other resources if you wanted additional information, or if providers had provided good examples of the things that they're talking about in the video.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah, I think that's really good. A video with a summary of the key messages and some, maybe a checklist and some links. That sounds about right to me.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than watching a video and somebody's telling you about this great resource and they don't show it or share it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm all for sharing.
Okay. And so videos seems to be quite a popular, quite sort of popular in that. So, you know, given the current climate, and Colin, you said a film crew. I don't know if you want to. I don't know if you want to expand on what a film crew actually means in terms of numbers.
It's maybe a bit grand. Film crew. You expect 50 people turning up with you know, catering departments and lights. No, it'd be 2 guys basically. 2 guys, camera, interviewer, and they'd be looking to talk to senior managers. They'd look to talk to people in different roles. So maybe people who are dealing with student support or teaching or curriculum leads or whatever they may be, and maybe talk to some students if possible, if that's allowable. I mean, really ideally we'd love to talk to some parents or some employers, but you know, that's if that was possible, that would be wonderful, because then we could get all the different voices and the different perspectives on the T-level. But the fundamental audience for this is the provider. So probably 70% of the voices would be the provider voices, and we'd want to see them in their wild environment.
And does that meet with would that be appropriate at this stage? Do you think for a couple of people to come in with a video camera and sound and stuff, would that be okay at this stage?
When would we be talking? I mean,
January to March, sometime at a time to suit you, and it'd probably be about half a day that they'd be on site.
I think obviously if you knew about it in advance and it could be managed well, and all the restrictions that were in place at that time could be followed, then we could kind of live with it. We've recently had a photographer in to do our prospectus photos, so I can't say absolutely, of course, not a problem, but I would say depends on where we're at and what the local situation is at that time. That's the bottom line for all of us, isn't it? We've got to kind of follow the guidance and the rules.
Is that the same for the other two as well?
The other two providers, do you mean? Steve?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, recently we've just had a film crew in from the ETF, and for a 2-day stint. It was hard going on our delivery staff. Yeah. I've got to say. I think people have got to realise that our teaching staff have got a day job. And if we take them out of the teaching arena, that job still needs to be done. Yeah. So I would ask that if that is going to be sort of the way forward for you, that you be very specific on what you're asking. You provide as much support prior to the filming of that, and so that we can, be really efficient and effective, and look after our teaching staff, really.
I mean, what we've tended to do, obviously there'll be pre-documentation about permissions and access and all those sort of things that we have to do anyway, and then we've found the most effective way of doing it is for you to identify a lead who will accompany the crew throughout the day, and they'll be responsible for managing the agenda of, right, we'll be this person at 10:10 and this person at 10:25, and us issuing beforehand a script so that they can think through their answers well in advance, and have any I don't know, materials or equipment or whatever in the right place, so that we can. I mean, we did one where they just built a fantastic new engineering workshop, and we did the interview in there and panned around and looked at all the shiny new kit and all that sort of stuff. Looks great for those who've got it. For those who haven't got it, it's a bit miserable, really. But
I mean, we wouldn't be opposed to having filming at the college as long as COVID permits. But yeah, it is. It sounds nice and easy. You're coming into a nice little bit of filming, but actually it's quite a task for staff.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
Okay, and our contingency is we'll send you a studio in a box, which would be a camera, light, something that you could record, and you have to position it yourself, but it's never as good as having the professional.
Yeah.
I mean, last year we did a lot. We did them all because we couldn't go anywhere, and we had so many to do. We did it all on webcam, and the quality was variable.
Yeah.
So our preference is to see you in all your glory on site.
Jenny, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Steve. I just want to add there that another contingency is, depending on what the restrictions and regulations are about COVID and access to site, and what your organizational policy would be, is to meet somewhere locally. So that was also offered by the film crew, so that they wouldn't necessarily go on site, but they could meet you somewhere else. It wouldn't be as amazing because we wouldn't be able to see the facilities, but that's another possibility. But again, as you say, it's much easier to do it on site, Gail, so that you're not taking staff away for longer than is absolutely necessary.
So I'm hearing an interview at the local Witherspoons, and
actually, I did a pub case study. It was a real trial. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of that, then, so we're kind of looking at a consensus that we're happy with videos. We managed correctly videos on site, given that the current COVID restrictions of the time permit that. Would managed correctly, these would be sort of the things which would be suitable for the providers. So the other thing then is looking at the bullet points that are, in terms of each provider giving an idea of their student journey, and the bullet points that are there just at the bottom of the first page. Is this a reasonable set of bullet points? Is there anything there that shouldn't be there? Is there anything not there that should be there?
Should there be marketing on there, Steve?
Yeah. If you think so, then the answer is yes, because you're the experts here. So yeah, so marketing probably yes. I would say definitely, yeah.
And recruitment. You're talking about marketing to students and parents and employers.
Yeah, to all really.
Yeah.
And that employer engagement side of things is pretty clear how you go about that as well.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Fair enough. At this stage, this is focusing on the T-level side as opposed to the industry placement side. I know it's a fundamental.
But the T-level, let's not forget that, delivering a T-level, you really want your employers involved in the delivery of it a little bit as well, and in class and doing some of their work prep and all of that kind of stuff. It's not just about when they go out. It's about having your employers kind of on board as an integral part of it, a partner in it.
Yeah, and it is the start of the student journey, really. Yeah. And then, so I think that is valid.
Well, it helps to sell the student journey as well onto a T-level if you've got a decent cache of employers.
Of course.
Maggie, you had something to say.
Yeah, I was just agreeing there with Sue that I think, having that employer engagement aspect in there is really crucial, because from induction onwards, you need to have that presence of the employer, that involvement.
Yeah, that's good.
If we just
and just to,
sorry,
Maggie, too.
No, it's okay, because we're just looking at the student journey for this, aren't we? I keep thinking about all the bits that need to come before the student journey, but then if we're also looking at when the students are coming in for initial advice and guidance, we've got learners that come into college for open days and welcome events who haven't already identified that a T-level is the right route for them, and that's because they've not been exposed to any information about it in schools or by careers. So when they come to us, for some learners, it's the first they've heard of a T-level. Now, I know from January there's going to be a huge focus on marketing, but up to now, it's been very, very limited. So the student T-level journey starts with them even hearing about a T-level, and then it's been our job really to let them know what that T-level is and how that differentiates from the other qualifications that we offer. So for me, the student journey goes back a fair bit, and if we're doing this to support other providers, yes, they need to totally understand the student journey in terms of that qualification, which starts at enrolment and induction, but there's so much more that precedes that because of it being such a new qualification.
The student journey starts in year 11, doesn't it? It starts when we start doing all of that stuff in schools, going, lots of it virtual last year, but this year, luckily, we've been able to go in and do some of our year 11 assemblies, and they were all before our open evening, and our interest on open evening on T-levels was phenomenal, because it was the first time these young people had been into a college, because they'd never been able to do that before now, and secondly, they were coming in the door after assemblies going, where's the T-level stand? Where do I go to find out about T-levels? And that for us was a real bonus, because we haven't recruited as well as we wanted to, but because we weren't able to go out and tell anybody anything about it, we weren't able to do the stuff that starts in year 11, and I think a really good focus of the student journey would be to support new providers to think about how they get that message across to those young people, and most crucially their parents, because a lot of parents are doing not so keen on this idea, it's new. That's a barrier that we've got. That's the truth of it, and that's a barrier we've got to break down if this is going to be the success that the DFE wants it to be.
One of the points you made, and somebody made, was about having links in these new resources and case studies to other existing resources. So in the list that Steve shared at the beginning of the year 1 resources, there is a section on marketing and recruitment to students, so part of this T-level student journey, and also employer engagement and why and how you would engage the employer. So those resources, whilst published this year in September, they are available. So we're able to be to link them all together and to tie that into the student journey. Or if you were just looking from an industry placement liaison officer point of view, you could go, where does this bit of my role fit into the student journey, and so on. So they should then all interface to each other. But it might be worth us thinking about, Steve, that whole, I was going to say route map, but route is the wrong word, but the whole map to starting off, you know, the T-level, thinking about T-level right to the qualification and planning for the next year, that whole piece, not just the student journey, but beyond.
Yeah, and I think we in the colleges, and I think the other two providers would hopefully agree with me, we think about the student journey from pre-admission to us. That's, you know, getting them here and converting them into an enrolment is fabulous, but there's so much work goes before that needs to be, that's part of our student journey, about how we facilitate that transition and how we get those learners from an application, which is brilliant, loads of applications, converting them to enrolment is the key, and converting to enrolment onto a T-level is there's a lot of work to do within our communities in order to do that. You know, I had this conversation with my ESFA chat last week when I had my meeting about T-levels, about the fact that one of the things that needs to be done is a lot of work with schools about what these things are, because that's, you know, we've been saying this for 12 months, but when you're still getting asked by a careers lead in a local secondary school, remind me again what a T-level is. We've got work to do.
We did a trip project at Harlow College with other providers, and we were looking at the recruitment of students onto the T-level, and the research identified that the biggest influences for our young people are parents and the advice and guidance team at their school. So those two stakeholders really do hold a lot of weight. So not only do you need to market the qualification to the students, but actually you need to educate the parents and the staff at the schools so that they fully can provide that guidance to their young person, and you know, sort of make sure that they are fully aware of the benefits and drawbacks of each of the options that are available to them.
I think that's very, very helpful input. I think we will include something on that now. I think when we get to the next stage, which is before we go out and do the interviews, we'll prepare a question brief, and it'd be really good if we could get your views on that as well. So, for example, when we're covering now this awareness phase, this pre-recruitment phase, question, how do you go about educating parents and local schools? And we can get them to talk about that. So, and then so if we can run our initial question brief past you, and you can enhance it for us, or say, don't ask that. Well, you know, everyone knows how to do that, or you've missed this out, or whatever it is.
Can I just say, at Harlow College, we produced the marketing resources for the 3 different stakeholders. So we had a video for students. It was edited to make sure that it covered areas for the parents, and then there was another 3rd version for the staff in the schools, so they all had their own version. We also did a survey before the presentation or the watching of the video, and a survey after, so that we could collect feedback and make sure our marketing information in our advice and guidance team covered all of the queries that hadn't been covered in the video. So it was sort of like a whole cycle, really, of getting feedback and making sure we were covering those areas. So
sounds brilliant. It sounds like Harlow has to be one of our case studies.
Well, yeah.
Yourself into that.
How did I know that was coming?
Right.
I'll stop.
Well, we're looking for volunteers.
I'll stop.
Hands up, yeah.
Right, need to sort of move on then. So I mean, I think there's some useful things there for you, Colin, to
it's really good. Thanks.
Take away there. just very, very quickly looking at the bullet points on capital projects, because I'm keen that we want to spend a bit of time also doing talking about the industry placements. Is there anything that sort of immediately sticks out as shouldn't be there, or anything that's glaringly omitted from the case study for T-level capital projects?
No, I mean, realistically, it's 2 lots of 5 case studies, isn't it? And we'll be talking to probably quite different people. I mean, there will be an overlap of staff in your colleges that will be looking at both the student journey, obviously the student journey, and how that works with capital projects, but they feel a little bit separate to me.
Will all new providers know whether to apply for capital funding to have a capital project or not? How do they know whether to?
That's part of my team's job as the T-level advisors. We will, they'll get information from ESFA if the capital funds will become available again for next year. So they'll be told that through ESFA, and my team's job then is to sort of raise awareness of that and make them aware of that.
I actually meant more, so that's about funding, but I mean, what about if they thought, oh, well, we do a T-level, but we can't because we haven't got the infrastructure or whatever it would be that a capital project would supply them. How would they know to do it? I mean, is that part of that same?
Yeah, it's part of the same conversation. Plus, as well, DFE put on a series of webinars and so on as well, or ESFA put on a series of webinars to outline the capital process, and my team would again make sure that their providers know when the webinars are, and that check to make sure that they're registering into that and getting access to them.
I think if you're registered with the AOC and the ESFA as the T-level lead, you get inundated with stuff about T-levels, about what you can and can't do, and it's kind of non-stop, really. You just end up immersed in the whole thing, is what I feel.
So if you were looking at a T-level capital projects case study in isolation, do you think these points cover all of the areas then that providers would need? If you think about it as the same journey.
I'll take this silence as assent.
Yeah, seems
Perfect.
Okay, right.
Well, when we get into it and you get the next level down of questions, maybe you'll have more specific technical issues that you could highlight for us.
Can I ask then that the 3 providers, can you go back onto the meeting invite and open up the document for industry placement and the resources for the industry placement? So the industry placement is designed to be slightly different, and so what I'll do is, if I give you 3 or 4 minutes to read the guidance on the industry placement, and then we can have a similar discussion about these, and just check to make sure we've got the right ideas there.
Steve, can you just confirm which document I've got to open?
It's now year two industry placement resources for providers, version 1-1.
Thank you.
So Sue's just had to nip out for a couple of minutes. She said she just has to deal with an issue. So so Sue's just nipped out for a minute or two. But can you just sort of initial thoughts from Gail and Maggie then on these?
I think, sorry, Maggie, was you going to talk?
No, go on, Gail. Okay.
I was just going to say, we've had trouble recruiting onto our health T level, particularly because of the industry placement and the requirements that the settings were asking for. For example, they wanted the full health records of each of the students. They wanted records of their inoculations and all sorts of things. And in the end, it just wasn't, we just couldn't recruit to our health T level because of those requirements that the settings were asking. So I think for each, I think it would be good to have sort of identified barriers or challenges, for example, for each of the health of the pathways. For example, as well, in science, we've got a problem of the age of the students going out on industry placement. A lot of the settings will not allow anyone under the age of 18 to go into, to do an industry placement with them. So that's sort of one of the challenges for that pathway. So they've all got their own individual challenges, really.
Yeah.
Maggie?
Yeah, I like the idea of having a checklist. I think that's really great that what Gail's just pointed out in terms of having some of the barriers. We're not delivering the health T level until September 22, but we've had that struggle with our BTEC health cohort, whereby employers are asking that they're double vaccinated. I'm actually in a meeting next Wednesday about this, because it is a challenge that students going into the health sector are facing. And I think that's whether it's a T level or not, because most qualifications do have this requirement for placement. So yes, potentially having some of the barriers there, and just some of the standard things that are attributed to those sectors, such as with health, you've got the DBS requirement, which I know is bog standard across the board, but if we're assuming that people are starting this from scratch, I really like the idea of feedback from students being involved in that. We've been doing the Learner Voice meetings with our transition programme students and our early education T-level students, and we've had some fantastic feedback from students, making us look at things very differently in terms of the type of information and the volume of information we give them before they start the programme, things that we can do better. So for us, that's been a really valuable insight to inform our practice moving forward. So I think that's a great idea that we have something like that going in there. I'm just taking it all in at the minute, digesting.
Sue, we're just having a look at the industry placement ones and just sort of seeing if there's anything again that just sort of sticks out.
I think one of the things that's not a concern, because it's sorted, is making sure you've got the right people in your industry placement team in order to facilitate your industry placements, in terms of that kind of supporting employers and going out there and getting them on board. I mean, we've been really fortunate, because our NHS Trust has just said they'll take all our health students, full stop. So we've been really fortunate. But I think it's one of the things that we've had to do is really think about who those people are that are helping to place our students and their particular skill set. That's been an issue for us.
So is there something maybe there then, Colin, around the sort of the training and upskilling of existing employer engagement staff to specific T-level employer engagement activity?
Yeah. I think so, and especially tailoring it to specific industries. So you could see something like your employer engagement team for digital will need to understand this, the vendor quals will need to understand networking, will need to understand, or not understanding in great detail, but will need to at least have an awareness of what's going on in the industry.
And I think you've got to remember that in a small FE college, we don't have an industry placement employer engagement team for every different route. We've got one central service team that need to know all of it.
Yeah, so these sort of checklists, knowledge checklists, might be useful for them then. But then there's, I suppose, the question of keeping them up to date. But I mean, they'll at least be valid for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And you also, Sue and Gail, think that contribution you get from the awarding body in terms of resource support has been really helpful to us. I don't know if you've had a positive experience with the awarding body, but we really have.
I think we've been quite fortunate, as I say, because I'm in a small town at the end of a peninsula with no other college doing T-levels and industry placements. So it's helped. In a lot of people say being isolated is not a good thing. Right now, it's working in our favour. But we've been quite fortunate, so we haven't really needed a great deal of support from the awarding body around this. The ETF people have been really good about it. The industry insights programs, that kind of stuff, we found that really valuable. And I think that would be a real thing to make new providers aware of is everything that can be offered through that program with the industry insights, and them arranging placements to get your staff upskilled and up to date with what's going on in the industry and in the sector, because that's pretty crucial. And again, it's one of those things, as you start your T-level, you start to find these things out as you're starting to plan it and get involved in it. But to be really good to know up front about, here is what you can do to upskill your staff ready for this.
Yeah, we found that the specialist team at NCFE have been really useful for our placement officers to get that upskilling in respect to what the T-level requirements are, because these are areas that we've always had placement in, haven't we?
Yeah.
There's a significant difference between what we have to do on a placement for other programs
to this.
The T-level. So when you've got really great placement officers, it's a complete mindset change, and that's where we've been able to utilize the awarding body to support that really, and to make them feel more prepared and aware about what the T-level is. The other thing I was thinking is about our classroom resources in terms of industry placement, because again, I don't know if Sue and Gail agree, but just having more access to industry-based resources in a classroom setting so that learners can simulate activities, again, far more prevalent with the T-level than it ever has been with any other qualifications. So making, affording the learners the opportunity to access physical resofor simulation, for practicing,
that special equipment stuff, that special equipment allocation. For example, one of the things that our science team did, now unfortunately we didn't recruit enough to get the science off the ground, but what we did was we went to the path lab at our local hospital who said they would do our science industry T-levels, and we looked at the industry level equipment they had there so that we could replicate that in college, so that when a learner went out, they were used to using that particular expensive microscope that did X, Y, and Z at the hospital, and I think we work in a sector where for so long we've not had chunks of money to spend on equipment. Some of our staff have found it really difficult to change that mindset about, no, you've got a lot of money to spend here, you need to really think about how you're going to spend this. And we've had some real struggles with some of our staff to think about that. And for Wave 3 providers, there's going to be an SEA again in the spring term. It's really useful to do something, I think, around helping those Wave 3 providers to think about special equipment allocation and how you need to think differently about what you're doing. It's not about getting a load of new kit for your thing. It's about making sure what you've got is at industry level, so that when they're going out, they're using the stuff that they're going to use, on the placement. That's what we've kind of focused on.
Yeah, and I think you bang on there what you said about going out to your local hospital, because we visited hospitals, nurseries, universities, just to get a flavour of the kind of specialist equipment that they are using.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did.
T-level. So again, when we're advising Wave3 providers, giving them that kind of advice, I think will be really beneficial to, you know, to start seeking that out now. And like you say, spending the money that's there for them to spend.
And our staff have found that tricky.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Okay.
It's really helpful.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think what that's sort of given me is an insight, Colin. And so hopefully then, so there's things there that we can take away and we can deal with. So thank you very much for all three of you for your valuable contribution there, because it's been really insightful. And I think what we'll do, Colin, then is we'll try and package this video up and send it out to the ones who couldn't get here today, just to see if there's any other things that we can do or get some feedback. So we can put that out and sort of put out a relatively short deadline of any chance you could just have a look at that, and if there's any sort of points that you either agree with or disagree with, or alternative points, if you could just drop that into an email, then I think that would be really useful. But hopefully that's given a way forward. I don't know if Pete Baker is still on the call. I see him there. Pete, there was one thing that sort of struck me then about him, because Pete's the manager of our industry placements project at the AOC. So the sort of the issue about double vaxes and stuff, is that coming up always in your dealings with providers? If you're there, I know your camera's not working, but you're on mute if you are there, Pete.
I mean, from our point of view, we're in exactly the same position. We've had providers we've worked with for BTECs for years who are now saying we won't take your learners unless they're double vaccinated. And of our year one learners, only 95% are double vaccinated. So we've got a massive barrier there straight away to getting out.
And I should imagine it's a shifting sort of landscape as well, because it'll move from being double vaccinated to being triple vaccinated soon as well, I should imagine, won't it? So, yeah. And you're probably therefore then looking at fewer students being triple vaccinated.
Pete and I both spoke with an employer and provider group, and we've had several similar pieces of feedback from employers on the employer support side of things, where they talked about the perceived myths and then trying to kind of and challenges, and then how they address them. And sometimes they've worked together with city councils. Sometimes they've talked to their insurers and said, yeah, some of them said their insurers are the ones who are stopping them having young people on site without these things and things like that. So there are groups who have managed to deal with all of these challenges. And so maybe we'll be able to bring some of these things into this kind of resource to say, have you thought about this?
I think dealing with those challenges depends very much on your local systems and services. So I've been working for 2 months now with our clinical commissioning group, our town council and our local authority to try and get a pop-up vaccination clinic at the college, because we were kind of like, we've got a venue, we've got a captive audience. If you want to come and try and raise participation, we'll do that for you. 2 months later, I'm no further on. So it's as frustrating as anything, because if I could do that, I could ship my health kids down and say, look, you want to go on placement, here's your vehicle to get there. And you know, I can't make you do it, but my advice would be, but we've got nowhere. We wanted me to train all our staff as vaccine champions first. And of course you can't thrust that on the staff to become a vaccine champion, because staff are allowed their own opinions and views on it. So it's 2 months and I'm no further forward. So while I absolutely accept that there's ways around this, sometimes there aren't.
Yeah, sometimes there aren't.
Okay. Again, great. Thank you very much for all of that. You know, again, it's been really useful. I'm going to move on to something else.
Steve, I've got to move off now, if that's okay. So
yeah, that's fine, Colin. Yeah,
but don't forget, we're looking for volunteers. So I'll be on the phone to you all individually. I'll be sending you mince pies. Thank you. Right. Thanks for all of it.
So when you said sending mince pies, was that
not you? You're not getting any. No.
All right.
All right. So yeah. Bye.
I was so disgusted, I pulled my earphone out as well. Okay. So there's another couple of things that we want to just cover before we break off. I think we're on schedule to sort of finish around about 4:30 as opposed to 5 o'clock, and I'm hoping that doesn't disappoint you greatly in that. Do you have access to a mobile phone or something? Could you? So if I share my screen, there's something that I'd like to do, and I might have to read this because it'll probably come up quite small. So our T-level team are running an event in a week or so's time for Wave 3 providers, and the event is entitled Strategic Leadership of T-levels, and we've got 9 areas. I think we've identified 9 areas that we're thinking, right, these are probably important 9 areas for strategic leadership. Now, if you go onto your mobile phone, if you go onto menti.com, and if you put the code in 93096971, it should take you to this slide. Okay, now if you do that on this slide, you should be able to read the words better than you can on my screen. Okay, would you be able to pick 5 of these 9 that you think are probably the most crucial? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Could you just repeat the code again? I can't
So
see
yeah,
that.
so the code is 9309 6971.
Thank you. Yes, guys.
So what you want is us to pick, if we're
So there's 9 of these. You can pick 5. Pick 5 that you think are the most important, and hopefully we're going to have some form of. This was planned when I was going to maybe have 6 or 7 people attending the meeting, and I was hoping to have some form of consensus as to what are the 5 key areas to focus the event on.
Let me just clarify. What you want is sort of, if we were 1 year out from delivery,
yeah,
what would be the 5 most important things to get us ready? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Oof. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a sort of rough a rough consensus there. So obviously the key ones are marketing materials and curriculum plans, and then we've got employer engagement, entry criteria, progression routes, and staff professional readiness. So we can put together something from there. So so thank you for that. That's really helpful, and it just helps us to sort of say, well, look, these are the things that are the most relevant for at this time. So so that will help us with that event. So I thank you for that. One last thing before we go into wrap up. So we might not even make 4:30 because we did that relatively quickly. Gail, is that wine you're drinking?
I wished. I've got such a horrendous cough. Excuse me. That's why I keep muting my.
Okay. It did look like you were drinking wine, too. So,
that might be another requirement of being a T-level lead.
On tap wine, yeah, for these cold dark nights. So in terms of the work that we did last year, and I just wanted to show you something and sort of get an opinion as to, would this be useful if we could potentially, if you had access to this. So when you went through your planning of your T-levels, you went through the implementation plan. And now if that brings back sort of cold shivers and stuff like that to you, then I apologize. What we've done is we've developed a tool to take the implementation plan online, and it's called the T-level planner. So it's been rolled out in the first instance for the Wave 4 providers, so the 2023 providers. So they've just started to get their accounts access their accounts, and the idea being that the T-level planner is a central place for them to do the all the planning for T-levels. Now, obviously, everybody's still in the business of still planning subsequent T-levels. So I'm going to pass to Richard, who's one of my colleagues on the T-level support team, to give you a quick sort of look at what the T-level planner looks like, and then sort of get your opinion on, is this something that we should be potentially pushing the DFE to say it should be rolled out for more than just Wave 4 providers? So it is available for Wave 4s already. So I'll pass over to Richard on this one.
Great, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I feel that I should have prepared a video based on comments that were made earlier, and anyway, well, I've actually prepared a PowerPoint presentation, so I'll just share my screen. Oh, there we go. So yeah, I'm just going to give a really a brief overview of the T-level planner. So this has actually been created by a company called Mesmer. And as you mentioned, it's based on the feedback from the Wave 1 providers. So it's not, I'm not showing you a kind of a live website, these are screenshots. So this is part of the main plan. So when people use this, they'll create one main plan which will really cover things which you know, the provider will need to do for all T-levels. So, for example, here we've got management and internal communications. And in fact, the areas on here are management, internal communications, systems and structures, employer and stakeholder engagement, progression into and from the T-levels, student support and marketing. So as you can see, for each of those areas, you do have questions that you can answer and give a current status. So, you know, is there managerial capacity? You know, have you communicated to your staff, etc. And you can then fill in your current status, and you can add areas for improvement. And you can then also give yourself a readiness rating, so sort of a RAG rating. And as you complete the planner, you can see for each section the kind of progress you're making, and also the overall progress for the section. So this particular section has about 21 questions. Also, there's guidance for each of the questions. So there's a little I for information button. And if you click on that, you actually get links to guidance and resources. So it gives you some kind of pointers to where you want to go. But also it has links to websites where you can actually find out more information as well. And then, so that was the main kind of plan. So there's one of those for each provider, but then obviously you may be delivering a number of T-level routes. So you create one of these T-level plans for each of the routes that you're delivering. So very, very similar. You have the progress bars, etc. And the areas this covers are professional readiness, curriculum planning, delivery of T-levels, industry placement, and environment and equipment. So that's things like, you know, have you got rooms, buildings, you know, the specialized equipment that you might need, or at least access to it. And again, you know, there is help and guidance for each of these. So here's an example of the matching staff to T-level. So again, questions and website links. So any questions?
I think one sorry. One of the comments I would make in that is you've got area for improvement, and I think that would sound much better if it was an area for development rather than improvement, because, you know, we're on a journey towards the T-level. We're not doing anything wrong. We've just got stuff still left to do. An area for improvement is suggesting that we're not doing something right, because we need to improve. we don't. We need to develop. It reminds me in terms of what's on it is very much the T-level implementation plans that you filled in as a precursor to this. It's the same sort of areas. So I did find that to be relatively useful at times. So yeah, I think this will be okay. But just that terminology just makes me a little bit. Ooh.
Yeah, I think the thing is as well, yeah, I mean, it's based around the implementation plan, and it's based around feedback from the Wave1 providers. But the other thing is, the other section that we have that is to create an action plan, and therefore then you create the action plan, and then you can start to allocate actions to different people, and they get notifications that there's an action waiting for them to do. It doesn't have to be, you know, you can, we've designed it so that 10 people have access to it in the college, and you can vary the roles that they have within the college. So you have one overall T-level lead, but so for each of the T-level plans, you could allocate, you could change the owner of that. So it doesn't need to be the T-level lead, it can be the curriculum lead for each of the T-levels. So they then take the overall lead of that. You as the T-level leader, whatever, can see that, but they're the ones who are driving then the people
plan, their bit of the plan,
driving their plan, yeah.
Like that. As I say, it's just that little bit of terminology. It might not sound a lot to you, but from a teacher's point of view, it's
yeah. Well, I mean,
we always use not met yet.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds. I'm happy with that.
Growth mindset is the language. Yeah.
So, I mean, as we say, we've rolled it out to the Wave4 providers, so they're doing this instead of their implementation plans. So so they've just started using it really. Is it something which, if we were entered into a discussion with the DFE about extending usage to previous Waves providers, is this something that you think you would take up in terms of subsequent T-levels that you're developing, or is it slightly too late for yourselves now?
Steve, if I can just sort of jump in there, I'm just thinking perhaps it's just worth mentioning that the planner and the plans that are produced are actually kind of visible only to the college as a or the provider, I should say, so they are, secret is not the word, sort of only accessible to the provider unless they share it with someone else. So using the system doesn't make it sort of widely available to others, does it?
I think we've got an engineering manufacturing T-level coming online next year with 2 kind of managers new to T-level that are looking at that. It might be quite useful tool for them to think about, not in a formal you must do this, but actually as a kind of methodology of helping them to prepare. It wouldn't go amiss.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we know from one of the Wave, one of the Wave1 group that we worked with last year, the strategic group, one of the colleges actually said they really liked the implementation plans, and even although they didn't need to do them for subsequent T-levels, they still got their people to do so, because they just felt that it just helped to shape the planning.
Yeah, it's a bit like the kit meetings for the transition programme. It's, even though sometimes you're thinking, oh, we've got to fill all of this in, but it makes you fill it in, it makes you think about it, it gives you the time, because we never have any time for anything in FE, so it does actually give you, it makes you have the time to think about things and to reflect on things. So yeah, and
all actions and stuff like that, you put a time, you can put a time sort of date on, and so the people will get reminders when they've missed the deadline, and it kind of does some of your chasing for you without you having to sort of come across as being the one who keeps on checking up all the time as well. So there's advantages there in that respect too. So I think from what I'm hearing, I know it's an incredibly small sample here, but from what I'm hearing, there's possibly mileage in us seeing if we can sort of have a bit of a rollout for previous Wave providers as well, in terms of the usefulness of it. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, we have reached roughly the end. I've got one last request. Okay, and Steph was going to say that, but she's dropped off the call because we didn't want to sort of appear like 45 AOC staff and 3 providers. So there's a few of them dropped off just to sort of not make it like we were here mob-handed.
Hey, we can handle it. We can handle it. We're working it.
Yeah, but one of the things that we've had requests from our Wave 4 providers is, have we got access to previous Waves providers in terms of things like a year plan for particular T-levels or curriculum plans for particular T-levels that could actually be shared? And I'm basically on the scrounge to see if there is anything that you would be willing to share with us in terms of sort of like an overall year plan. So here's the curriculum model, here's how I'm fitting in industry placement, here's how I'm fitting in sort of any sort of formative assessment windows and stuff like that, and then looking at here's how we're looking at delivering the curriculum plan. As I say, I'm on the scrounge. I'd be really grateful if there was anything that you could potentially email across to me that we could maybe share with our Wave 4 providers. We would probably put it on our Padlet site and just we've got a Wave 4 Padlet, so we could put it on our Padlet site and just tell the Wave 4 providers that there's stuff there for them to look at.
Yeah, I'll speak to our health and education and get some stuff off them.
Yeah, we'd be most grateful. We'd recognise, we'd make sure that we recognise the contribution from yourselves, and so we'd say that, and you know, that we're really grateful for the providers who are allowing these to be shared, and so we would acknowledge that, but it would be really helpful for the Wave 4 providers to see. That's one of the things. We had an event with them just a couple of weeks ago, and the one thing that they keep on asking, we just want to see what's happened before. We want to see the plans. We want to see other people's plans. You know, rather than them develop their own, they're thinking we just want to see. We want to see what other people have done.
I think we'll all be doing it differently as well, won't we? That's the thing. There is no one size fits all. There isn't a magic bullet that you go, this is how you do a T-level. It's dependent on so many things. It's dependent on your staffing, your specialisms within your staff, your facilities, all sorts of stuff that go, and when your employers want them as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's fitting all of those little things together to try and keep the ship sailing. That's the tricky bit with all this.
Yeah. So if there is,
to be fair, I think, Steve, our teams are developing their plans as they're going along. So they've started off with the, awarding organisations plans, but they're unpicking and putting together and taking apart and editing and
they're working out what they can't do.
Yeah.
I think that would always be our advice is, when you start delivering a new program like this, use your awarding organisation and what they've already got a scheme of learning as a general rule, and it's not ideal, but it gives you a framework to work from in order to kind of think, right, okay, well, I like that bit, I'm not keen on that, but we could do this. That's one of the things that's useful. But I get this because when we were doing T-level transition kit meetings last year, we did an event where I think it was Blackpool College came and did a session, and they shared their transition timetable, and we were like, oh my god, that's what can I have that? Well, let me see that. Let me on that. So I get that. But I mean, I'm sure Keith, who's the manager for our 2 T-levels at the moment, if from a Wave 4 point of view, I'll offer our services to come and to talk about anything, about that kind of thing, about what we've done.
Remember, we're still recording this.
That's okay. Keith will kill me, but that's fine. I find that stuff incredibly useful. I've been through the last 18 months when you're sitting in one of these sessions with AOC, and we've all done a lot of them, and somebody says, this is how we're doing it. That's like, well, let me just take a photograph of that, because that's something I can then adapt. And that's sharing good practice. That's what teaching is all about.
I know at the college we're just developing Spark page student handbooks for all of the T-levels, and that will include things such as assessment schedules, grade boundaries that we're putting forward for all of their informal assessments that we're tracking on ProMonitor and things like that. So, you know, things that we're developing, I'm happy to share when we've got those developed. I know last year I was desperate for somebody to show me ProMonitor tracking for the T-level qualification, and I couldn't get anybody to share how they'd set up. So we've developed that now. So we've based it very similar to an A-level qualification, and you know, it's those things that it would just be so nice if somebody could have shared that with us to save us the pain.
That's still interesting, Gail, because we have a sixth form college as part of our college as well. We're a merged college, and one arm's a sixth form, one's an FE. And what we've done is we've taken our assessment system from our A-level thing and plonked it into our T-level thing because it works in the same way.
Right.
That wasn't really a worry for us because we already had something set up and had done for goodness knows how many years about assessing A-levels and how many times we do that and what the boundaries are and all of that kind of stuff. So, but I can imagine at the time that would have been about how the heck do you do this if you've not got that.
I mean, we're still making up rules as we go along. I mean, we meet, and the leads of the T-level qualifications, we meet every fortnight, and we come up with what are we doing about such and such, you know, how are we getting constructive developmental feedback? And one person will say, well, they're doing that, right, well, let's find one way that works for us all. So we use an app called Showbie, where students upload their work and we provide verbal feedback. So there's no typing, you know, it's all verbal, and the students just can go and listen to their feedback and play it again. So it's all,
what was that called, Gail? Showbie?
Yeah, I was just going to say, can you put that in the chat, Gail?
Yeah, it's a program called Showbie. So staff provide the work on Showbie, students download the work, complete the task, upload it back, so that then the tutor can mark it electronically and provide verbal feedback, so it stops the need for a form. And we had that in place at our last Ofsted inspection, and they were very much in agreement of, you know, that's a good way to provide that developmental feedback. But it's called Showbie.
Richard's just put a link in the chat.
Yeah.
What kind of price is that, Gail?
Sorry?
What's the price for that? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I'm afraid I don't know.
Right, okay. I'll have a little look. That sounds interesting.
We're because we're an Apple college, so all of our students have iPads, so it's very accessible.
All right, yeah.
I was going to say the pricing on the website ranges from individual teachers having it for free to schools having volume pricing, which they don't then tell you about.
We did start off with the free version, can I say? That's where we started. I think we've sort of like decided to get the costly version, but we did start off with the free version.
So yeah, it proves its use on the free one, so now it's worth investing in.
Yeah, and your students, all of your students have mobile phones, and literally our students then were using their phones to scan in a QR code and look at their work and get their feedback on their phones.
Which is how they work, isn't it? That's their norm.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't ban mobile phones in our classroom. We very much encourage the use of electronic. We see it as an employability skill that we're developing with all of our students. So it's just it's I mean, especially the written feedback, and you can go back years. You know, Ofsted can come in, they can look at the journey of that learner and see all of that lovely developmental feedback, and it's all stored there.
Right.
I can see how that I can see how that
This
would
is
be
what
so
happens
useful for a
when we get
T-level.
talking about stuff. This is the benefit of these things, isn't it? That,
Yeah.
oh, that sounds dead interesting. Let's
Yeah.
get into it.
Yeah.
But I could see how I could see how that would really you could really use that to track the journey of a T-level student, if you know, because there's only one formal assessment maybe at the end of year one, so you can track their sort of their development and sort of track all their formative assessment through that year, couldn't you?
Yeah.
You need to know. It's just like our A-level students. You need to know where they're at given points in the year, so that you can fill the gaps and support them for sitting those exams. You know.
Yeah.
Mary, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Gail, can the employers give you feedback on the students in the work placements using that as well?
No, but we use a product called Growfar.
Yeah.
For their industry placement, where we can get feedback from the employers.
Verbal like that though, because the beauty of what you're doing with
not verbally, no.
Yeah. So quick and easy, isn't it, and accessible for people.
Yeah.
Would it be difficult for you to put Shelby in the work placements then?
I don't think it would. I think if the employer wanted it, absolutely no problem.
I bet they'd prefer it to just
I bet.
verbal than written and filling it
I'm
out.
going to write that down. I'm going to see if we can do that on Growfar.
Yeah.
You could get the employers to pay for it as well.
To Shelby.
Well, the thing is, what I would say, the thing is the employers will be using Growfar for the reviews, for logging their hours. So I wouldn't want to introduce them to another product. But I do believe that one may be able to talk to the other. So that's worth finding out about, isn't it? Yeah.
We use a product called Salesforce that we're mapping our industry placements through. It's what we use for our apprenticeship tracking. So we're going to use that for our industry placement for logging hours and all of that kind of stuff. So we're just piloting that now with our education groups. They're already out on their industry placement, and see how we can utilise the modules that we've had added onto that programme.
And do you have all the reviews on there? Are all the reviews on there?
Yeah.
I just put a case study in the chat as well, where we talked to the Wave1 providers who had either developed in-house systems themselves, or they use Pro Portal for some things, and then they link it to an e-portfolio where the I think it was Bishop Burton probably. I think they had an e-portfolio that they developed themselves, where the exact same thing was an app that the students could use, the pastoral leads could use, as well as then the curriculum leads, and it linked into our stuff, and they were trying to pull it all together. Now they have the glorious advantage of a massive IT development team and probably some funding to do with that, but you're all thinking about the same things. I don't think listed the names of the brand names of, you know, otherwise we'd have to be like the BBC, wouldn't we? There are other
other versions are available.
But we did talk about them, and the people who talked to us about them, the providers who talked to us about them, they're named in there, so you could always contact them to see maybe if there's a system out there that would suit what you need. If it isn't, because Salesforce is notoriously expensive, but maybe in schools and NFE you get it in a better deal. You're on a pilot at the moment, so and you know the other colleges may not have the Apple connection, so maybe that won't work, or they want an interface system. So it's worth just having a look around, but that case study might explain a little bit around the background for that.
Yeah, I think it's a trial and everything, and the further you get into it, the more you're looking for things, as Gail said, like this will work for us, and let's pluck a bit of that, and that's the stuff from your Wave 4 providers that's the most useful stuff. That's what I took away from all of my stuff last year, was the information from other people that were already doing it, or were in the same position as me trying to work it out, and that's what you need. That's the support you need.
And those case studies actually from last year, I think that's the beauty of them. Not that I'm flogging these, because you know that they're there, but the beauty of them is that they are from providers who've done this, who've done a bit of trial and error. They share their successes, and they also share what they might do differently next time. So I've put a couple of the direct links on there, and Steve and Richard will share. Well, they're in that document actually that came with the meeting. But a lot of the things that you've mentioned on and off throughout our conversation now, some of them are touched on. Obviously, they will continue to develop. So the more input we have, the better to grow and develop them, especially because there's always area for improvement, Sue.
Not always. development.
No, I know, I was joking.
Just be careful. We teachers are touchy about these words.
All right, I shouldn't joke with the teacher either. Yeah, there is.
It's too late in the term to joke with a teacher.
Yeah,
you might get a joke with a teacher in the first couple of weeks of term, but not at this stage. Not in the last couple of weeks. They're on their knees.
We're hanging on now.
There's no joke.
Hanging on. We can see the end.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm going to give you 20 minutes of your days back. So thank you very much for all your contributions. So Jenny's put in something about a case study. So if there's any provider that sort of jumps out, you think, you know what, I'd like to speak with them. If you drop me an email, we can try and put you in contact with that provider. So we'll find out the contact and we can do that rather than you sort of do that searching and so on yourself. We've put the links to the case studies in the chat, but what I'll probably do is follow up. I'll probably follow this up. I'll take all the links out of the chat and maybe put it in a document that I send round with to the people who weren't here as well, so that I could get them to look at the recording and try and get their feedback. We are looking to hopefully have maybe 3 or 4 meetings throughout the year to discuss particular topics, and if 3 people can give us such wonderful information, I can't wait for 8, 9 or 10 people to turn up, and we might have to schedule an evening meeting or something. No, I'm joking, by the way. But yeah, no, I mean the level of detail that we've managed to get from the 3 of you has been amazing. So I thank you seriously for that, and I'll give you some of your time back. But if there's anything that's come up that you want to follow up or anything like that, then please do just be in touch, and we'll do what we can to follow anything up for you. Right, lovely. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Cheerio, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.